Okay, well, I am Professor Richard Hull, Hull. For 49 years, I was a professor on the Faculty of Arts and Science at New York University. My major field is African history. My doctorate was in African history, but I've always been fascinated with local history as well, American history. The president of Warwick Historical Society said, well, Professor Ho, you're an historian. Why don't you write a history of Warwick for the bicentennial? So I volunteered to do that.
Cool.
I said, you know, if you're living in a community, you have to give back something. You have to try to establish some kind of a legacy, not only for your own people living, but for the future of the community. And I came to love Warwick, the beauty of the community, for the extent of civic engagement here, the numbers of committees and clubs and organizations, many of them doing interesting things and good things for their community, community pride and loyalty, all the things you would expect in a vibrant, dynamic community were here. So it wasn't easy for me to move my family out here to the country, to the farm, to build a place here, to build first a little research center for myself, which is what we're in right now, and then ultimately to our house. Our first home was in Sugarloaf, and then in 1984 I built this building, and then in 1991 we built a house over here as well. I'm curating a major show which will be in the town hall early in 2023 on how Warwick became so obsessed with saving land. It started really with a rapid demise of farming with a federal dairy buyout situation. The federal government began to buy farmers out, not their lands, but their businesses. And Warwick had been a major dairy area. When my wife and I were married in 1970, there were 147 dairy farms in Warwick. There are 3 now. And so suddenly this was disappearing. And so a lot of property was being brought up by developers with the idea that Warwick could soon transform itself into a suburban community. And that worried a lot of people, not just farmers, but people like myself who loved walking across the meadows and through the orchards and all the woodlands around here. I mean, this is why we were willing to live here. The quality of life was so precious. So we began to mobilize into an organization called Community 2000. And we began to mobilize the community behind a number of things, asking people in the community, what do you value most about Warwick? Why did you move here? Why do you like it here? Why have you raised a family here? And it often came back to, because we love this open space. And we developed this scheme. Well, it was first developed in Suffolk County on Long Island, this idea of purchasing development rights from large property owners. The town would buy conservation easements over open space, mainly farmland. And the farmers would continue to own the land. They couldn't sell it all to a developer. The quality of life would disappear if we became a suburban community and all this land was just developed. We would not want to live here anymore, and maybe our children wouldn't want to live here and so forth. From the mid-19th century, from the 1840s onward, our area was experiencing huge growth of immigration populations. They're huge consumers of milk. And it reached a point where the farmers in Brooklyn, immediately outside of Manhattan, in Brooklyn, could do well. The farmers out here couldn't compete. The milk would spoil before it ever got to New York. They could only sell their butter. So they decided, the farmers organized, and they put money into railroad development. The first railroad came through Orange County in 1841, which became the Erie Railroad. So let's pool our meager resources, we all get together, let's build a railroad and connect it with the Erie Railroad and get that milk down into the city. So it just took off. And you could see Warwick transformed in a very short time. That capital became so great that eventually this was bought out, the railroad. The stock was sold to mainly what would become the New York Central Railroad.
Wow.
And the Pennsylvania Railroad. And now nobody in Warwick owns any stock in the railroad. And it's not, the Lehigh Hudson River Railroad hasn't run its own trains and owned its own trackage since the 1970s. So, yeah, the infrastructure really transformed things here. It can also be argued, though, that later in history, it served as our disadvantage in that Warwick is geographically rather remote. We're in the southern part of the county, and the great interstate highways and so forth are to the north of us. They didn't cross through Warwick, you see. So you'll see most of the development that has occurred since the 1950s, the late 50s, to the present, north of us, in Middletown and Monroe and Woodbury and in those areas, Goshen and not here. Railroads are so crucial. Passenger transportation was discontinued here in 1937-38.
Okay.
You no longer could get on a train in Warwick and travel to Chicago or New York City or so forth. You no longer you could put your kids on the train to get to school. We had to start buying school buses because the trains would no longer carry students from, let's say, Sugarloaf down to Warwick to school. So it's funny how infrastructure can help a community, but can also present new challenges, and adjustments had to be made. And our adjustment was, well, we still have a lot of open space out here, and so let's keep going with farming. Let's continue to encourage farming. Farming still, right up until recently, was really the major generator of revenue, of economic growth in Warwick. So we decided that was how we were going to meet that challenge.